Masking refers to when you adjust only certain parts of your photo. You create a mask on one part of the photo that doesn't affect the others. It would be like if I selected myself here, brightened myself up, but the background stayed the same. That would be a version of masking. I'm going to go to a different photo and one that will illustrate this better. So let's go with this photo of me sitting on a patio from a date night at one point, and we can just also quickly crop and straighten this so we can go through the different crop settings. There's a whole bunch of different aspect ratios for different things. If you want, say, a 4:5 for Instagram, you can do that. Maybe that's what we'll go with, actually. We'll do a 4:5 crop. You can also adjust and straighten that photo. That looks pretty straight there. And you can adjust a whole bunch of these settings as you go. These straighten settings, you can flip the horizontal, you can flip the vertical, you can rotate the photo, but that's just going to make everything look weird, so I'm not doing any of that. And you can also have it either be locked or freeform for your crop. Now, masking. This is where we can adjust specific parts of the photo. You hit the little plus icon here at the bottom, and you have a whole bunch of options. A lot of these are new. For example, to select subject, select sky. These are the newest features that have been brought into Lightroom for masking, because before you mainly had the brush, the linear gradient, and the radial gradient. And what this did was it would either have you paint over part of the photo, and then you could adjust different settings for where you painted over. Or you have a linear gradient, which you drag down over parts of the photo, and your adjustments will only affect where that gradient is. And it's called a gradient because it tapers off, it feathers. So it starts really intense at the top, let's say, and then as you go down to the end of the gradient, it gets softer until the effect is not even there. The same is true for a radial gradient, in which it's like a circle, it's a radius, but it works the same as a linear gradient, where the center of the circle is going to be the most affected by the adjustments that you make, and the outer rims of the circle are going to be the least affected, and it will work in a gradient to taper off, so it goes from really intense to nothing. But what I want to do here is I actually want to play with the different AI features that are here. So let's say we have this photo of me and I want myself to be brighter and the background to be darker. I'm going to hit the little plus icon and I'm going to hit select subject. And just like that, it detects me. You can see did a really good job of it actually. And that's when we go to our light, our color, effects, detail, all the different panels, and we can adjust just how they affect me. So let's say I want to be a little brighter. I can make myself way too bright, but I can make myself a little bit brighter. I can bring down the highlights again. I can up the contrast still, and I can just make myself pop out from the background a little more. Now, this doesn't look perfect because, for one, the background is a little warmer than I am currently, so I will increase the warmth on just me, and that'll help me merge in with the background a little more. But the other thing that I can do is, once I'm done with this mask, is I can adjust the rest of the photo to compensate for how I've adjusted one part of it. So say I'm too bright for the background here. Well, one thing I can do to make everything even out more is just drag down the overall exposure of the photo, say by 0.3, and now I still stand out. I look like I stand out, but I'm meant to be there because I'm warmer, because I'm brighter, but because I'm still in that natural environment, but because everything's darkened down, it just looks like I pop out a little more. It doesn't look like I'm too bright, because when you start just adjusting certain parts, you can end up looking like the background's too bright or the foreground's too bright. In this case, I'm the foreground, or what's closer to the photo. We can see the difference here where initially I actually look a little too dark in the photo. There's not as much light on me, versus when I do the adjustment, we can see I pop out a little more. But we can actually layer different masks on top here. So say next I want to actually add a little bit of a glow to me, like there's a bit of sun coming in. This is something I love doing across my photos. So I'll add a radial gradient, and what I'm going to do is drag that across. And the reason I drag that off is because right here, the center of the circle, that is where the effect is going to be most intense. So I'm going to actually drag it off so it just falls off nicely across my face. And then from here, we're going to brighten that up a little bit so it affects the background, but myself as well. And I can drag that around to where I want it to affect more. And then I can add, say, a little more warmth to that just to make it blend in. But also, maybe I want to add a little bit of dehaze, so it looks like there's a bit of a light trail coming in. So that's how we can do that. But maybe it's a little too much, so I'll bring the exposure back down because the dehaze does lift shadows, does do a lot of that work for me. So I don't want it to be too intense, otherwise it might start looking a little fake. So I can bring that down a little bit more, and that's looking pretty good. I can also adjust the feathering of this mask by clicking on the mask itself, just clicking on the little circle there, and then going off to the other side here, you see this little kind of gray circle. If I click on that, I can then have a slider that allows me to change how feathered this is, what the fall off of this gradient is. So if I think it's a little too intense, I can bring the feather up. If I think it's a little not intense enough, I can bring the feather down. But I think it's a little too intense. So I'm going to bring the feathering up, and that just makes it look a little more natural. And then we can see the difference that that makes across the board. We get a little bit of a light coming in that brushes across my face onto my shoulder, and because it's a wider circle, because it's off frame a little bit, it creates this really natural glow that comes across the image. And this is one application that I absolutely love using gradients for. You can also use the different masks here to change the sky. Let's say I have this photo of me on a boat and I want to select just the sky. I can do that, add a mask, and sometimes these are perfect, sometimes they're not. You can see here, this little bit, it did not catch, and you can hit add to mask, and you can actually add certain parts of it that will fill in the gaps that you missed. So say I want to add in that little window between my head and part of the boat here, I can actually take the brush and I'm just gonna paint over that. And then the same adjustments that I make to the rest of the sky will be made to this. This is a little sloppily done. This would be better done on an iPad where you actually have the pencil to do it. And then I can adjust the different settings of the sky. I don't want to really darken it too much because that's going to make it look weird. But if I want to adjust the highlights or the contrast, maybe bring the highlights down a little bit. Maybe I want to make it a little bluer. We can do that. We can make it warmer as well. If you want a little more of that sunset look, you can change the hue so you get a completely different look of a sky. You can see that changes the color entirely if you want more of that sunset kind of look, or if you want more of that teal or cyan looking sky. That's how you can affect that. And we can see the difference, those couple adjustments made there. This is something that they're currently always improving. Sometimes it's not the best at detecting things, especially like in here. This is where you could add the brush and paint in that mask. But for what it's worth, the AI is actually pretty powerful.